I'm Adrian Warnock, and I'm here to talk to you about the review version of the Logos library software I was kindly given by Logos. And this was so that I would review, but obviously I'm not constrained as to what kind of review I give. And I do spend an awful lot of money of my own on Logos. So if you want to contribute to my Logos addiction, please feel free to click on the link and you'll give me a small contribution towards that. Now, when I am going through myself deciding which of the libraries I want to go for, which I want to pay my own good money for, one of the things I do is obviously look at what's available. And these kind of charts show, of course, big question is how much can you afford? But it may be actually that you want to go for something in the middle, even if you've got extra money, because you could actually use some of that extra money in a different way. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. So let's look at Bibles. You'll see that actually the Bibles are not that good in many ways for these libraries. I think the assumption of the libraries is that you've already got some Logos, but perhaps you don't. Maybe you don't have some of these translations. Maybe there are other translations you'd like. But let's just take one example here. So the NASB, if you wanted just to buy the NASB 2020 update, it would only be $9.99. So why not buy that separately rather than necessarily one of the more expensive versions of the library? But it gets more complicated than that, and I'll show you why. So if you click on Learn More, you'll see that, yes, you can buy individually, but you'll also see that it's also included in other collections. And believe me, you can spend hours deciding precisely what collections you want to buy. But here's a really good one if you don't have very many Bibles. It has not one, but 6 different Bibles, and only for $40, and they're often at about $9.99 each if you buy them individually. So you're saving money and you're getting a number of Bibles here. So if you don't have these Bibles in your Logos, this is a great way to get them. So, but what about commentaries? Now, commentaries, that's where a lot of these libraries really come into their own. As you can see, if you were going for a nice middle one there, you get 255 commentaries. And you can see this is a big way in which it contributes to the cost of the items altogether. And you can see that there's a number of different commentaries here, without going into details too much, but the ESV expository commentary, for example, $189 if it's purchased on its own. And you can see that $279 is the silver library. So you'd be, a bit crazy to buy that on its own, really, if you wanted some other things also. And you see a few others in here, like the Tyndale, the Pillar, lots of these. As you can see, many of these. I mean, Tyndale, $338 on its own. Again, yeah, you don't get all of it, but you get what you get what you need. But have a look, decide what you want. So that's the commentaries. But one of the things that interests me, I'll talk about this a little bit right now, is the counselling and pastoral care section. I'm writing at the moment, as some of you may know, about the traitor within, understanding and healing our deceptive hearts, and so, or deceitful hearts. And so, looking at some of this pastoral care stuff looked quite interesting, counselling and such like. And so for me, I figured out which one I wanted. And in this case, I didn't have to pay for it. But this is how I would go about selecting from the libraries. I will show you one other thing, which is quite interesting, which is that if you, for example, and this is how you can get sucked into a little bit of a detour, if you like, but it can be quite helpful. So here's, for example, the Spurgeon Upgrade Collection. It's 2 volumes. And so you think, oh, Spurgeon. Now, perhaps you haven't got any Spurgeon, and I would suggest to you that you should get some. But if you look at this, this is just £16, and it gives you a taster. But it's not actually, it's in a few things, but it's not really in many things on its own. So this one is an example where perhaps you would consider getting it. But perhaps what's important to note is that these are not the main Spurgeon sermons. So what's more to the point is here, the complete Spurgeon's collection, and that's what I would advise people to get. So now that's, it's not cheap at $500. But what's really interesting is if you look down here, there's several different collections that actually cost less. So it's very important to look down there. And so you could save yourself a large amount of money and get some extra resources if you're interested in Spurgeon by simply using this kind of approach. And as you can see, there's a number of different approaches. And again, you'd need to have a look at what is important to you. And so, for example, you know, this Logos 8 Silver might be of interest. You click on that, and you can see that there are a number of other resources in here, some Bibles in here, some commentaries in here, in addition to the Spurgeon that you're looking for. So I hope that gives you an idea about how to try and make the best of your money when it comes to Logos.